Mimî Khayisa, welcome to An Actor Despairs. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
It's so awesome that you're here. Olivia, who you work with, has spoken so highly of you, and then reading your resume and then everything that you've done, it's been incredible. And like, you've kind of been a citizen of the world. You spend a lot of time in Africa too, as well, right?
I do. So my dad's side's Zimbabwean, mum's side's South African. So I spend a lot of time in both of those countries. And I pretty much have a second home in South Africa, which has been beautiful that the recent play I've done has been based there. So I've had a chance to fully embrace what I've been newly discovering, having, been living there on and off.
No way. It
And
all
now I
comes full
have,
circle. I love that.
it really does. I feel like art does that. It's really nice.
Well, I'm so excited to get to talk to you, but as my audience knows, I always like to start at the beginning, and I know we got a little ahead of ourselves. So where did you originally grow up?
So I grew up in Surrey in England, so just outside of London.
Okay.
And born and bred there. So me and my brothers, my dad, lived there pretty much all my life. And then about 6 years ago, I reconnected with my mum's side of the family because my mum passed when I was 10. So I didn't have much
Oh, I'm
contact
so
with that side
sorry.
of the world at all. But that's what took me to South Africa. So it's a recent discovery, that side of my life. And then I've been writing a book with my dad that's been taking me to Zimbabwe, which is where he's from. So that's where my travel for non-official work related things has come from.
Oh, and talk to me. What were your parents artists? Like, how did this thing originally happen for you?
No. So my parents are actually academics. So I have that classic, I think, story for a lot of Black artists of you say you want to be an artist and they're like, that sounds like instability.
Yeah.
That sounds like a difficult life. Can you just be a doctor, please? So my dad, well, my grandparents' side on my father's side, they're all chiefs. They're from a chieftainship family, so they're leaders, they're natural leaders. And so when my dad came to this country, it was very much from that side of his family. So also what our book is about. So I'm discovering that side now, but me myself in my family, I'm the only artist.
Wow.
I'm niche.
And
I'm the rebellious young one.
you're obviously writing a book, but talk to me like, did the original exposure, did you grow up reading a lot of novels? Like, were you watching a lot of film and television? Like, where did you start to feel the pull to
It
performing?
was stories. It was stories.
Mm.
So in our culture, so my family is Zulu. In our culture, all of our history is told through stories. So you'll learn about your ancestors, your grandparents, your relatives through the stories that your elders tell you. And it's just passed on like that. And they're the most incredible stories. They're really dynamic. And I also remember my dad picking us up from the school gates, and the other kids would ask him questions about, South Africa and Africa. And they'll be fascinated by the stories he would tell. And I was like, I want to tell stories. Like, I want to be this magnetic. I want a slice of that. So my dad started taking me to the theatre. He was like, let's just go see some things, see if you like it.
Like the
And then
West End?
everything, anything and
Wow.
everything that he could take us to, he was like, just go and see it. My dad was very much on the wavelength of experience as much as you can in the world,
Yeah.
um, in ways that are constructive to your mind, right? And if it unlocks something, explore it a bit further. So it unlocked the bug in me. So then he enrolled me in youth theatre, which was just on Saturdays. And I must have been about 12, 13 then. And then from being 12, 13 in youth theatre, I then joined the production group. Then that kind of was my road into acting. That's
Traveling
how that
around with
began.
the production group?
So, no, the first time I ever travelled for work, I must have been about 16, and I did the Edinburgh Festival. You know, the Edinburgh
Oh,
Fringe
yeah, of
Festival?
course. Yeah.
Yeah, so I did that with my then friends, now peers in the industry. And the whole group, pretty much, that I trained with at youth theatre, we're now all in the industry, whether it be through casting, writing, directing, actors. But we all kind of got that bug. And we did a couple of years of doing the Fringe Festival. And then I remember my friends saying, we're going to drama school. And I said, well, what's that? What do you do that? I want to go.
Because obviously for the American audience listening, I've had a lot of British guests on, but I feel like it's almost, in the UK, even more than in America, it's so aristocratic. Some of these schools have been around
Mm.
forever. Were you aware of like the Lambdas, the Radas, the guild halls?
I had heard of them, but I didn't know how they sat in regards to me and my life. I
Mm.
didn't necessarily know what my access point to them would be. And I remember just reading an article in the Telegraph paper, I think it was at the time, that said the top 10 drama schools of that year. And in that year, Royal Welsh had won it 3 years in a row, which is where I went. And
Wow.
I knew I couldn't audition everywhere, so I auditioned basically for the top 5 on the list.
Do you remember which
And Royal
ones?
Welsh, I can't even remember where I auditioned. I must have done WADA and Lambda. No, in fact, I definitely did WADA. I don't think I did do Lambda actually, or maybe it was the other round. I forget. It was so long ago. But I remember when I did Royal Welsh, I got on the waiting list. I didn't directly get in, and I cried. I was like, "Why am I crying about this school in particular? I must really want to go there." And there was one teacher there, Anita Reynolds, and she was a black tutor. And I remember after my audition, she took me out and she said, "When you come back in for your recall, I want you to allow yourself to relax into it and take it so much slower, because all the things that they're saying about you is that you're rushing, and it's almost like you're scared to go there.
Yeah.
So just completely slow down." And I came back and I did exactly what she said, and I felt like she was championing me. I felt like she really wanted me to be there, and so
Yeah.
I fell in love with it. And then I ended up going. So
That's amazing. And obviously I think there's this misconception for, a lot of Americans that you guys are always doing classical work, whether it be
mm,
Shakespeare. When you do these auditions, did you already have experience with Shakespeare and doing some of the classic work?
only through the youth theatre, so not through plays as such, through mainly speeches. And then when I was looking for speeches for drama school, you have to do a classical speech. So that's when I really focused on it. But I didn't do a Shakespeare play until I was at drama school. And then after drama school, I did pretty much 3 years straight of only Shakespeare plays. I went to do the RSC. And so I love Shakespeare, but actually it wasn't my natural into the industry at all.
Wow. And was that, talk to me about that moment of like you go back in for your recall, you make the adjustment. Did you know at that moment that you were getting in?
No, not at all.
Really?
Not at all.
How
No,
long was
not at
that
all.
from that audition, or that, I guess that would be the
I think it was
recall?
weeks. I think it was weeks after the recall. I remember there was a big wait between the first audition and the next one, to the point that I thought they've already chosen. The term starts soon. It's all over. But once you had your recall, it was quite a quick turnaround. And I've never been someone who's gone in a room and thought, this is definitely mine. Even in my working career, I've never had that.
Wow.
So it was a pleasant surprise. Yeah, it was lovely.
And talk to me, like, because we spoke about your dad and, he kind of had his own trepidations about this. Where was he at this point when you're auditioning? Was he supportive, because you
Oh
were doing.
no, me and my dad were not on speaking terms.
Wow. Did you not tell me you were auditioning?
No, as far as he was concerned, I was enrolled to go to university. That's where I was going. And that's also why I put a lot of pressure on myself, because I knew that if I didn't get in that year, I would have to go to my university place. And I was like, I don't want to do a wasted year at university. I know I don't want to be at, but I cannot tell my dad I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
I
Oh my
have
God.
to go somewhere.
Totally. Did you kind of have, because every actor gets told their whole life, like backup plan, backup plan. Did you have like this doctor, lawyer type,
not not in my heart of hearts. On
Mm,
paper, maybe I did, but in my heart of hearts, I was like, I think I have something to contribute to this industry, and I think it is big enough for me to have a slot in it. I do genuinely believe that. And why don't I just go to drama school and see what happens? And I just sort of promised myself that I would push myself. And I remember starting drama school and I was like, I don't want to hide or give myself excuses not to do things. I want to really push myself to be the best that I can be.
yeah.
And I want to be bold. And I remember getting to third year and everyone was, thinking about agencies they wanted to write to. And I already started doing it in second year because I was like, next year there's going to be a frenzy for everyone around me. And if I start early, then maybe they'll start having their eyes on me. And so I actually started with my agency, Gavin, when I was in second year, not third year. And he had said to me, I don't want you to feel like you can't meet other people. So we'll have a season where I can find your auditions, you can meet people, we can see how our relationship is. But I want you to know that you are free to explore what this world is. And we can reconvene when you're towards the end of your third year. And I thought that was the most amazing thing that someone could have said to
Yeah.
me.
What a
And now
guy.
it's honestly, and
Yeah.
it's what, 11 years on now, and I'm still with him.
Amazing. Shout out
Yeah.
Gavin.
Yeah, he's incredible.
So tell me about the time when you found out you got in and then you had to have this ultimate conversation with your dad of like, "Dad, I'm going to
I
drama
never
school."
told him. I
You
didn't tell
didn't.
him. I just went.
No way. That's amazing. Wait, how did you? He thought you were
I
going to
did.
another university?
Yeah, he thought I was somewhere else. Then Christmas came and I was too scared to go home. So I didn't go home. And then he got worried and he was like, we're going to come up and see you. And I was like, I have to tell you something. And I told him and he was fuming. He was fuming, not only about drama school, but obviously I'd lied to him. And that's like a basic principle. You don't lie to me. And so we didn't properly communicate then, like as father and daughter like we do now, for a good year and a half, where I sort of swallowed my pride and could talk about it freely, and where his heart kind of settled towards it. It was a long period. Yeah. But I remember I didn't tell him at all.
But so I love that. Talk to me then about the training there, you know, like from having this journey of not thinking you're going to do it to applying and then getting in. You know, what was the training like? It was Royal Welsh, you said?
Royal Welsh, yeah. So Royal Welsh College of Music and Drama. So they have an amazing music scene there as well, particularly in terms of opera. And it's in Cardiff. And so actually I found it quite nice to be out of London, because London is incredible, but it's such a busy hub. Yeah. And you can get drawn into the world of, you know, go see a show every other night of the week, and you want to be
going out, being young.
All of it, right? Whereas you don't have that as much in Cardiff. It's a bit more insular, and I quite liked that. And something else I really loved about Royal Welsh is, as much as you were doing your training to be an actor and be an artist and book jobs, you were also doing training in terms of what happens when you're not booking work. And they would say to you, you can always create, you know, but having a job doesn't make you the actor. You are the actor, right? And the actor will go in and book jobs, and they might sometimes you'll do things that you don't like and aren't fulfilling for you, but then you have to find the fulfillment elsewhere. And so we would have this thing called an EYA, end of year assessment, where you had a 20-minute slot to create anything you wanted. And you could cast anyone you wanted in any year group, so first, second, third year, or a musician. And you just have to write your own piece. You have to direct your own piece, light it, design it, just create.
Like a full-length play, or just a 20-minute in length?
Just a 20-minute slot.
Okay, got it.
And I think when you got to second year, it was slightly longer, but for your first one, and I remember when they told us in our first term, everyone was terrified. It was like, what? So this is so much pressure. I thought you were just going to tell me how to book a job and to do the job.
Yeah.
Right?
And were you writing at this point yet, or no?
No, at this point, I hadn't even thought that was a thing. I hadn't thought that was something that I was ever going to be, one, interested in, or two, something I could do. Yeah. It wasn't something that had been unlocked at all. But I loved it, and it was incredible. And so the last 2 weeks of term is just everyone has their slot and you go and see other people's work. That's all it is. You don't have your classes. It's nothing from the morning to the evening. And then at the end of the slot, they'll have maybe a re-showing of the top 5, or maybe the ones that were so full that they need another slot for. But they were incredible. And then what would happen come second year, maybe someone would take the same principles. So there was one incredible actress called Sophie Morgan, and her comedic timing was impeccable. It was absolutely impeccable. And I remember she had written her EYA that she knew she was performing at the end of the year. She had written it within her first term. Yeah. And then she was just fine-tuning it. So she took the same concept that she'd done for her first year's EYA and did it again in second year, almost like a series. And I remember coming out and hearing people speak, and you'd think, this could be on telly. This is hilarious. It could be on telly. And then when we finished drama school, she ended up touring it. She did the Edinburgh Festival with it and did some slots in London with it. And it was absolutely incredible. But it sparked a lot for people. And there's people in my year, who were in my year at drama school, who now are still creating their own work. And it stemmed from, at drama school, having to do that thing that unlocks something else.
I love that.
It was wonderful.
That's so beautiful. That's amazing. I wish like American drama schools had something similar to that, but that's so cool that you had that. And then at this point, you know, talk to me about positioning yourself for, you know, post drama school, you know, still while you're there, you know, at what point while you're there did you start to realize like, okay, this is building up to a showcase, I should start getting an agent? Like, was that at the end of your first year?
So Royal Welsh was one of the rare drama schools. And in fact, I don't think they do this anymore, but they had a policy that you could work whilst you were training. So most drama schools, Yeah, you were allowed to work. So even in first year, if you booked a job, number one, you're allowed to audition for work. And number two, if you book something, the tutors would talk with you on an individual basis about whether they thought it would be good for you.
Yeah.
And you were allowed to work, which is really rare for drama schools. And I don't think they do it anymore. So it automatically put you in the mindset of this, this that we're doing at drama school isn't an insular thing.
Yeah.
You know, this is part of a big industry, and there are already eyes on us looking at us potentially working. And what does that look like? So your mind's already thinking about places that, number one, employ really young actors who are fresh out of drama school,
Yeah.
where your training also continues, because it does continue. Training doesn't stop when you leave drama school. You learn on the job, and there are lots of institutions that really champion that. I remember being at the RSC, they really champion that. And Royal Welsh would always have outside directors coming to work with us, outside casting directors, camera crew would come and work with us. So we would have, I think it was a week, or it might have been 10 days, I forget now, where you would pick a scene and you would go and work with a camera crew and you create. Yeah,
this is like the best drama school in the world.
Honestly, it was incredible.
Yeah.
It was incredible. But you would create snippets of yourself on screen with different scenes, and then it would end with a monologue if you're doing a monologue.
Would they record this for your show reel?
They would record this for you. And so it would stay in-house. It wouldn't be online. But if ever anyone wanted to see your work, you could send it out. You could always access it. Wow. And then when you left, you got given it. So then you always had something. Because that's also really hard, coming out of drama school and feeling like you don't have a body of work to present, because the thing that you did was a show that only lasted a couple of nights. But they were great at giving you something. You also got a really nice voice reel of monologues that you did in the recording studio for radio work. So you leave with almost like a little package.
Amazing.
And that you start building that package up kind of from the end of first year. And so I had my first professional audition at the very start of my second year. And that came through a casting director called Emma Stiles, who's not with us anymore. She came and did a workshop with us at drama school. And off the back of that, she said she was casting something and would I like to come in and audition? And the drama school let me. I didn't get the job, but it was my first professional audition.
What was it, for theater or for film and television?
It was for film and television.
Amazing.
But it was the first time that I was like, oh, maybe I should follow up on that meeting. And I remember emailing her to say it was wonderful to meet her and XYZ. And then I also emailed the other casting director who was in the room. And I think that was the first time I'd ever reached out to anyone in the industry. And I remember her replying, and I was like, oh, she replied. Maybe I should email someone else.
Yeah, totally. Amazing.
And it kind of, I feel like so many of these moments are little seeds, aren't they? And you take something from it that goes, I can try again, or that went really well, maybe I can double down on it. And then that's how you start building these relationships that even now I have. But that was when I started emailing. I started emailing agencies, casting directors, and I would talk about the things that we were doing at drama school. And, you know,
were you inviting them?
Showcase. I would invite them to shows that we were doing. And as a class, we would always look at who's inviting who. And let's not make sure that all of us aren't bombarding the same person.
Right. So you hit different people, so you don't have totally.
Exactly. So we would spread it out. But there was a mind on it before we were in third year, before we knew that graduation was around the corner.
That's so much better, because it's not, all tides aren't leading to a showcase. You're already actively pursuing all the things you need to do.
Exactly. And also then I think for people watching you, they have a really varied experience of the things that you can do. It's not this one night where maybe you didn't have a great night, or maybe you did a speech that didn't perfectly suit you. Actually, they've been watching you for a year and a bit, and they've got a really rounded perspective of, one, what your strengths are, two, what maybe your different looks are and the different things that you can, you know, slot into, but also what your interests are, because you're building up a bit more of a relationship with them. And I just felt like that was a lot more of a natural in than feeling like I had to be on my best for one night.
And at this point, while you have all these amazing things that you're doing with your classmates, is your dad finally starting to come to see your productions? And he was he amazed? It must have been so cool to have seen you perform finally.
Yeah. I remember, so I left drama school early to be in a Shakespeare play. And I remember Dad came to see that and he didn't tell me that he was coming and he had found it online. I had told him that I was leaving drama school early to do a play and he found out what it was and came. And I remember
What production was
when
it?
the lights came up. It was Taming of the Shrew with the RSC.
Wow. Who were you?
So it was a role reversal. Who are the two guys? It's Bianca and there's another one. Oh, my mind's blank now.
I'm thinking of 10 Things I Hate About You, which is the film version of it, but I can't remember.
Very different.
Yeah, I know.
Equally as funny.
Yeah.
But it was one of the lovers, and it's the lover who's normally the male. I forget now.
Okay.
I forget, but I remember my dad came to see it, and I remember looking up, and when it was the curtain call, I could see him, and I was like, oh no, my dad's here. And then I cried. I'm naturally emotional anyway. And then my dad cried. And then he came back backstage and he was like, you're an actor. Yeah. I was like, I am. I'm an actor. Wow. It was beautiful. And he's seen everything since. He won't miss anything.
I love that. And talk to me, like having that moment of doing a professional production and leaving drama school. Like I had Jack Loudon on the podcast not long ago, and he had something similar happen where he at that point decided to just keep working. For you, did you want to go back and finish?
No, my term was almost over.
It was, okay.
It was almost over. I think there was one more play left. And then straight off the back of doing that job at the RSC, I got offered the next one that the RSC were doing. And so the RSC, when I was there, the jobs kind of rolled from one to the other because it was almost as if they would be casting the next thing as you're semi-leaving.
Got it.
And so it worked out that for a good 3, maybe slightly less years, I stayed there. And I did a couple of telly things in between, but I remember it just kind of went one after the other, and it was really beautiful to have that experience.
Amazing.
Yeah, and that was definitely an extension to my training, definitely.
And at what point then does like something like Mr. Selfridge happen? Was this...
So that Mr. Selfridge happened after I was doing a group of new writing at the RSC. So they had decided they've got this other theatre, it's called The Other Place, and it had been set up because they needed a temporary space to do work while repairs were happening in the main theatre. And it ended up staying because they realised it would be a great opportunity to have new work there. So new writers, new directors. It was an experimental place. And a writer, incredible writer called Alice Birch had written a play, and Timberlake Vortenbaker had written a play. And they were going to be on back to back. And so I got cast in that, and I ended up being on the one to watch list from it. And then there were 2 other plays that they had then commissioned from there. So it ended up being 4 plays, from originally 2 to 4 plays. And the cast was the same throughout. And then we'd gone on to do, I think it was Latitude Festival. But from being on the one to watch list, I got called in for a casting for Mr. Selfridge. And then that's how I got Mr. Selfridge. I think every job that I've had has always come off the last thing that I've done, or maybe a couple of things before, or a relationship that I've formed somewhere. They've kind of always led on to something else. Even when I haven't got jobs as well, even if it might have been I got down to a screen test or a reading for something and I didn't get the job, a lot of the time it will lead to something else.
Amazing. And while you were doing, all of these productions, were you really happy, working in that medium, or were you feeling this itch to do film and TV as well? Like, or were you just happy to be working?
It's always a bit of both for me. Yeah. It's always a bit of both. I don't think I've ever done a job that I hate. I'm trying to think, am I lying to you? And I'm like, I don't think I am. I don't think I've ever done a job that I haven't enjoyed, which has always been lovely. I've always worked with incredible people. And I think it's only normally at the tail end of a job that I start thinking, what next? What next?
Yeah.
And then normally when I've been in theatre for a while, I really want to do a bit of screen work. When I've been doing screen work for a while, I really want to do a bit of theatre. I really like the back and forth of it. I like mixing things up. And also it feels like I'm retraining a muscle. I think I work very differently just on a technical level, when you're on stage, you work very differently to how you are on screen. And so I never want to stay away from it too long. And if I feel like the years are going by, I'm like, take my time.
Totally. And,
You know, but it's exactly the same with the stage. When I feel like I'm in this big place, I go, no, I want some subtlety. Take me back to the screen.
I love that.
So it varies.
I'm curious because, you know, the UK is so famous for these costume dramas, and obviously Mr. Selfridge was one of those to speak. But at the same time, you know, things like Netflix started happening and the business started to kind of become globalized in a way. Were your sites ever on like American productions? Like I know particularly now there's a lot of American productions that film in the UK, but before we got to this moment pre-pandemic, were you coming to New York or LA? Or any productions even on the theater realm transferring here?
I've never had a pull to a particular place. My pulls always come from projects. I think it's also why. So before I always used to say that the stage is my favorite, and now I go, actually, I don't have a favorite. My favorite is doing work that makes other people think or makes me question how I live my life. That's my favorite kind of work, and I actually don't mind where that is. I actually don't mind how many eyes are on that. I don't mind if it's in a tiny little theatre or on a Netflix screen that's worldwide. Actually, what's really fulfilling for me is the human experience and exploring that in whatever medium. And whenever me and my agent have talks about the goal for next year or the goal for 10 years' time, it's always about the work that I want to do and how best to do that, how best to facilitate that. Even if it's conversations we have about me potentially creating my own work. It's always centered around, I guess, the heart of a story, or people that I believe are making work that speaks the human experience. I'm obsessed with adolescence. Have you seen it on Netflix?
Yeah, I just had the director on a couple of days ago. Yeah, it's incredible, right?
Incredible.
Stephen Graham is national treasure, man. Oh my God, incredible.
He really is a national treasure.
Ashley Walters, Top Boy, one of the best. I mean, oh my God.
Human experience where you can look around and you're like, I recognize that. Oh God, I didn't know that was that. Let's talk about that. What is that? How does that happen? That's what fascinates me. That's what I'm hungry for.
Well, since you've brought it up, you know, speaking of literally Netflix, how did The Witcher, how did that originally happen for you?
So I can't remember what the lead on was from The Witcher, but I know that I'd been doing Star Wars, and I'd also just finished I went back to the RSC, my RSC days, and I just finished playing Ophelia, and it was Papa Asiaidi's Hamlet, and we'd just finished touring it, and and then I went straight from that to Star Wars, and it was in that interim where casting had seen both projects. So Sophie Holland, who had cast The Witcher, had seen me in both of those projects and knew that I was doing Star Wars, and she said, I want Mimî to come in for this project. So bear in mind, one thing I should say is when the Witcher auditions were happening, we didn't know they were Witcher auditions.
It was fake sides?
It was fake sides. They weren't sending out any briefs to do with any real characters or any real references in terms of the books or anything. No, we didn't have any of that. Normally, they say it's fake sides, but your agent will say it's probably going to be this.
Yeah, totally.
But we didn't have that. We genuinely did not know what it was for. And I love that when that happens because I find it really liberating. I go, okay, then this is just going to be based on, number one, my instincts and this little 2-line brief about the internal mind of this character. And I can push it as much as I want because I don't know what it's based on. And then if they don't like it, I can rein it in. So I'll go in big and see if they rein me in.
Amazing. And was this back in the good days of in-person auditions?
This was back in the good days of in-person, which means you have time to play.
Yeah.
Right? And it also means you have time to ask questions and there's going to be an interaction. So there's no fearing going too bold because they can just tell no in an instant.
Yeah, the feedback is immediate. And so when you went in, did you just have a lot of fun with the material?
Yeah, so we had a conversation just about her basic characteristics. And I remember they said to me, she's very still. She internalizes most things. And she must always come across strong. right? And I remember doing it, and she said to me, Sophie Holland said, and what would happen if we brought in internal vulnerability, but externally she stays strong and still? And then we played with that. And then she said, I think we're done. And I thought, oh, that's not good. Why are we not doing it again? That's not a good sign to be like, we're done so quickly.
Yeah.
So I left. I thought, no, must be really far away. And I forgot about it. And then it was a really long time until we heard back. It was quite a long wait. And I honestly forgot about it. I have this, I genuinely believe that if something's for me, wonderful, and embrace it. But if it's not, allow yourself to let it go. Otherwise, it can just torture you, right? And so I genuinely had let it go. And then months later, my agent calls me. He said, do you remember that thing you went in for? And I was like, which one? And he was like, you know, that thing with Sophie Holland and you spoke about stillness. And I was like, oh, yeah. I said, who got it? He said, well, no one yet. They want you back in. And I thought, they haven't cast it yet.
Yeah.
What? And he said, yeah, I think Sophie wants to have a little talk with you about doing a tape this time. And so spoke to Sophie Holland, casting director, and asked me to do a tape with a new set of sides. So I did that. And then it wasn't long until we got the call to say you booked the job. And then I had my first call with Lauren.
Wow.
So once we had the recall, again, it happened quite quickly, but initially really slow.
And did you even know that it was going to be this reoccurring arc?
No. So originally I was contracted for 2 seasons. So I knew I would do 2 seasons, and then I thought I would die at the end of season 2. That's always what I thought. So when they asked me to come back, I was like, so am I going to die?
Amazing.
I'm not going to die this season, or am I coming back as like someone's memory?
Yeah.
But I also, this always makes me chuckle. So I wasn't a gamer at all. My brother, on the other hand, huge gamer. And so obviously once I booked the job, I found out what the job was. And I was talking to my brother. I said, oh, it's based on a game. And I'd ordered my books and I was going to start. And he said, what's the game called? I said, oh, it's called The Witcher. He went, what? I went, it's called The Witcher. He goes, shut up.
No way. Oh, man.
I said, oh, do you know it? He's like, you're not in the effing Witcher. I don't believe you. He was genuinely shocked. He called his best friend. He said, you never guess what my little sister's doing.
I love
and
that.
Him and his friend, they played The Witcher together and they absolutely loved it. And so when I saw their reaction, I remember thinking, this is going to be fantastic because it's something he already loves and I'm going to get to be in it and we can now share this experience. Yeah. And that's when my real excitement kicked in for the show, seeing his reaction.
How was it working with Henry Cavill? I mean, you know.
Incredible. I didn't get any scenes with Henry, but Henry's so warm. He's so warm. And so I remember those early days, he kind of really looked after us. He kind of took everyone under his wing. And the first season, we shot it in Budapest.
Oh, I love Budapest. I was just there.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Hey?
So fun, right?
It's magical. Have you done any escape rooms? We got a bit obsessed with escape rooms.
They were all over. I never did one, but are they great?
They're incredible, particularly there. I can't remember which one of the girls got us into them, but it ended up being a bit of a thing when we were on season 1. Not that we did them with Henry, but I remember sometimes we would meet after work and things. And I guess he just naturally looked after us. He's just very warm. So it's been beautiful with the whole cast. And I was talking to Anya recently, just as we start gearing up for season 5. And we were just saying, I cannot believe it's been, almost 7 years? It's almost 7 years ago that we started this job and it's flown by. It feels like it's gone so quickly. Yeah. It's going to be a really emotional season this season. Really emotional.
Oh, I'm excited for you. And new number 1 taking over this time, you know?
Yeah. I'm really excited for people to see. Yeah. I can't say anything.
Okay. We'll leave it there. But, you know, talk to me about, like, obviously those kind of sets, you know, it's almost like Monopoly money. I mean, the attention to detail, was that a really fun time having every tool and resource that Netflix threw at the show? Like,
it's incredible. Walking onto those sets is incredible. And even now I get blown away by it. And also not even just because of the money, because I remember in season 1, we didn't have as much money. I mean, it was still a massive show, but it was nowhere near the money that gets thrown at the show now. And it was, you look at the team and you're like, the creativity that goes into this environment, the detail of it. I mean, there's one scene that we shot last year. So it's for it's for season 4, but it's to do with the magic. And they brought out the book that holds all the magics, like the holy grail of books.
Wow.
And they have written all of the incantations in there. It's all written in Elven by hand. And it's this book like this. And it has these gorgeous, the pictures in it, the imagery, it's all done by hand. And every chance we get, we try to open a new page so that we can get a close up. Because we're like, people have to see this. It's
the
remarkable.
Attention to detail is incredible.
It's it's incredible. Yeah, it's beautiful. Those sets are just phenomenal. I also had that the very first time I was on a big budget project was Star Wars. And I remember walking into this.
Which one was it? Was it Skywalker?
It was Skywalker, yes.
Yeah,
okay. It was Skywalker. And I remember walking into the forest, which was essentially a massive greenhouse.
At Pinewood?
At Pinewood, yeah. So the studio space, the double studio space gets turned into this forest. And it's essentially a huge greenhouse, but it's incredible. And I remember getting hit by this gorgeous smell of like nature and trees, and there's lakes inside. And you're like, what? You feel like a child. It's the magic of theatre that you live, and you're like, I feel like a kid.
I know. It is incredible what those designers can do. It's so amazing.
It's incredible. Yeah, it's beautiful.
So, talk to me, because, for the actors listening, obviously, like in 2020, the whole business really changed. Yeah. And you had a show obviously still going at that time, but, as someone who had got was going in for so many amazing things in the room, and, even got to do The Witcher in person. As the business changed, how did the business change for you in the pandemic? Because I know you did a self-tape already, but was this hard for you to kind of recalibrate this new business that started to form?
Yeah, I mean, if I'm completely honest, I didn't feel the full shift of the industry until I decided I wanted to go back to theatre. That's when I felt the real shift of the industry.
Talk to me.
And I think I think a big part of that is because The Witcher still continued. I mean, we were one of the first productions to go back to filming in the midst of lockdown. So we went back at first, the end of summer 2020, and then we closed down again and went back again. Wow. So we were one of the first productions to go back.
Still in Budapest?
And I remember, so no, now they had moved us to London. So they had moved, but they had moved us because of lockdown. So we were due to go back to Budapest, and they basically brought everything over. And they held it in the warehouse, knowing that they might have to change last minute. So that time was very strange and also very new. It still felt very new, trying to learn what trying to do a show while social distancing was.
Yeah.
So at that point, I remember thinking, wow, gosh. And even when we went back for the season after that, there was still very much the remnants of COVID in the air. And we still very much had the distancing, and the spacing out of things was still within the safety of lockdown parameters. And I think when it eased off at the studio, for us, it felt like normality was coming back. And I remember talking to other actors, particularly in the show, where, number one, you have this extreme sense of gratitude that you're in an industry that is this temperamental and you're working. You have this immense sense of gratitude. But also you start thinking about, God, what does everything else look like? Yeah. What's happening for everyone else? And you start talking to other actors who maybe aren't working at all, or whose shows got completely pulled, or conversations with my agent, and he'll be like, it's dire out here. Like, the industry is dire and no one knows what's going on, so you cannot plan anything. And I know, we're recovering now in many ways, but even simple things like self-tapes, it feels like a completely different medium. To not have that interaction in a room with casting, where you can find a sense of play and where you can discover relationships, in your screen tests and things. I really miss that. I feel like most actors really, really miss that.
Same.
I also feel like production missed that, right?
I also feel like, this whole business is the imperative thing is human relationships,
right?
And if you don't get the chance, you it's like Bumble, like you could the love of your life you could just not meet because you're swiping left on an image versus
Right?
getting an interaction with someone.
Completely. And I think it also it invites the realm of wanting to stick with what you know, people wanting to stick with actors that they know. So I think it makes it incredibly hard for new artists, for new actors graduating, coming out,
It's never
because the
been
desire
hard.
to take the
Totally.
risk, it's so difficult because there is a fear of taking risks because you don't have the usual connection where you can try things out. You don't have
Yeah,
it. This is this whole section of what we do just taken away.
totally.
Um, and so I really feel for people who are newly graduating or even coming out of drama school and looking at what they're going to be graduating into, because I think that side of the recovery of the industry is happening a lot slower. Um,
While we're on this
that's
subject, what for those listening that are in those shoes right now, if it
mm,
were you, and I ask every guest this, like what advice would you have for those artists that are graduating drama school and are trying to kind of break in? You know, any advice you might have for them?
you know what, I would probably do what I did when I was at drama school, which was allow myself to create a network outside of the realm of the room. And I guess I mean that in terms of when I think of casting teams that I've worked with, they're very perceptive to seeing bodies of work. So if it's even you pick up your iPhone and you take speeches or scenes that you know are strong and are in the realm of work that you want to do, record it, create a little body of work, kind of like what I got when I left drama school, right? This little
Yeah.
body that you could send out. And it's so much easier to spark a conversation when you have something to show, but it can be so incredibly hard to have something to show live,
Yeah.
right? So if you can create with your peers, people who are also graduating, like always network sideways. Don't always think you have to go this way
Mm.
because those are the people you're going to walk this industry with. Those are the people that you're going to be exploring this realm with.
Yeah.
And so find your people, number one, and create with them. And then once you've got something, don't be so analytical that you get frozen. Allow yourself to put it out there and see what happens. Because this industry constantly surprises you. Opportunities will come from places you didn't even think someone saw something in. You didn't even think
Yeah.
someone noticed you there. And you'll get a phone call a year down the line. Oh, I saw you in this. Or I saw your tape when I thought that was so creative. You have no idea. But I can promise you that if you don't put it out there, you're not going to get a response, right?
Yeah. Totally.
So we kind of have to dare ourselves to be bolder. I guess that's what it invites.
No, thank you
Um,
for sharing that. I'm curious in this time, is this where the impetus for you to start writing came from in the pandemic?
mm, definitely, definitely. And I think so. I've always wanted to do a story about my grandfather's story, but me being an actor and loving emotion,
Yeah.
I was like, this cannot be a history book. This has to be about a heart and connection. And so that's where my realm went. And with the time that we had with lockdown, it seemed the best time to start, right? And I started and I let it sit there for a long time, if I'm honest. And then I started speaking about it. And as I started speaking about it, people would ask me questions.
Yeah.
And I'd think, God, I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know when that happened or how it happened. Let me research it. So that's when me and my dad put in a research team to help us with some of the blanks. And so we've had a good, I want to say almost 2 years now of just gathering information about Zimbabwean independence and the Lancaster House Agreement, which is how Zimbabwe got independence, and that happened in London. And so now we've got a whole body of thousands of documents that we're going through whilst also trying to think about what the arc of this story is going to be. And it's fascinating.
Something that could be a series, you think?
Well, right now our focus is the book,
The book,
but
okay.
I would love it to be a series. I would love it to be a series, and maybe it's something we do in tandem. The options feel really big right now, partly because we have so much information that we need to kind of whistle through,
Yeah.
and gorgeous pictures. This is also where the internet and reaching out to people comes in a really beautiful way. I remember reaching out to people. When I say that, I mean the masses on Instagram and Twitter, and asking for any information or pictures they had, and the influx of things that I received, like photos of my grandfather that I'd never seen before from old newspaper cuttings and things,
Wow.
or references to books that I didn't even know were out there. It was incredible. let life surprise you. I think it's a big part of it, right?
Totally. That's amazing. I'm so excited. I can't wait to see more about this. You're
Mm,
going to have to come back when this book comes out.
definitely. It's a promise. Done.
But, obviously now, in 2025, I feel like last year, I'm sure actors there were saying it. We heard survive to 25. And now we're here in
Mm,
25 and work is still kind of crazy. There's not a lot going on. And the stuff that is going on, there's a lot of remakes. Like, they're
yes.
doing Harry Potter.
Yeah.
And, for you as an artist and as an actor, what are you feeling most interested in? You just finished a production, right?
I did. I did. I just finished a production called A Good House by a South African writer, Amy Jepter. A new piece of writing, which feels really rare at the moment to have new writing out there. A South African play about community. So it's set in a gated community, a private estate, and it's three couples, so six characters, one black couple, and it's about why and how we choose to live with each other, right? And it has all of the isms. It has racism. It has all of the isms. But more importantly to me, what I find is the whys, like the whys of the decisions that we make. How do we reach conclusions, right? And are all of them, not only are all of them logical, but are all of them conscious? The decisions we make, a lot of the time, they're not conscious decisions, right? And it's the knock-on effect of it. And what happens when we realize maybe we've made a bad decision? Do we choose to save face or do we choose to rectify? And how does that empower us or maybe make us feel weaker? And Amy Jepter, so it's also a comedy, it's a political satire, but Amy has an incredible history with political plays. And she is extremely interested, number one, in land reform, which is a really big topic in South Africa at the moment. In fact, all over the world, not just South Africa. But she's also really big on these pockets of society. Who's naming these pockets of society?
Yeah.
Who's choosing where they sit in that pocket? And what happens if you want out of a pocket? Or what happens if you want into a pocket?
Yeah, totally.
And she's really fascinated in those nuances. And I remember listening to an interview of hers when she was talking about the play, and she said she really wanted to write a play where there were absolutely no heroes, but there were also absolutely no villains.
Wow.
And I wanted people to come out wanting to talk about this subject, but not from a point of view of I stand with this person and I'm against that person.
Yeah.
Just from the point of view of where would I stand and what is the decision that I would make and why or how would I make that decision? And she achieved it. And I can say that she achieved it with such confidence because we, as the actors, a lot of the time would go down to the bar at the end of the show. And you don't always want to do that as an actor. Sometimes you feel too emotionally vulnerable to do that.
Yeah.
But we did it a lot with this play. And the conversations that we would have with the audience, magical, extremely moving as well. Just about things that they had experienced, whether it be in South Africa, if they were living there or had a history there, but also anywhere else in the world, about the people that had been ousted or things that they had seen happen or people that they had invited and felt some kind of warm connection to. I can't even pin down exactly what these conversations were about because they were about so many different things.
Yeah.
But we would stay for hours, absolutely hours, talking about the show. It's incredible. The show's actually due to go to South Africa this year as well.
Are you going to go with it?
I don't know if I'm going to be able to because I've got The Witcher.
Ah.
I'd love to, but I might not be able to. But that's also okay because I've been able to do it. And for that, I'm really grateful for. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. It's incredible.
This was incredible, Mimî. I'm so grateful for your time and your insights, and I so deeply love talking to you. And you're a true artist, and thank you for sharing. And it means so much to me.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And you've got to come back.
With pleasure, honestly.
So obviously The Witcher will be coming out, but any other things that we can promote right now?
No, The Witcher, but even if I'm not in it and you have a chance to see the play in South Africa, anyone out there, go and see A Good House by Amy Jepter, Johannesburg, at the Market Theatre. I think it's going to be there June, July. Double check that. Even if I'm not in it, please see it.
Well, spreading the word. Mimî Khayisa, thank you so much for your time, and to be continued,
Thank
okay?
you. To be continued. Thank you.